June 2014. A young couple buys their dream home in Westfield, New Jersey. A beautiful 6-bedroom house on a quiet, upscale street. But just days after they move in, they get a letter, no return address, just a white envelope. Inside is a handwritten message. And that was the start of something terrifying. A real-life mystery so chilling, Netflix even turned it into a series. But what they showed on screen barely scratches the surface of what actually happened. This is the real story of the Watcher. Derek and Maria Broaddus were your average American couple. 3 kids, big dreams, and the kind of life most people work hard for. Derek had worked his way up the ladder at an insurance company. Maria stayed home with the kids, keeping the family grounded. So when they bought 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey for $1.3 million, it felt like everything was finally coming together. Quiet neighborhood, big backyard for the kids to run around in, a house with character, 6 bedrooms, old-school charm, the kind of place you imagine raising a family in. It was perfect. Or, so they thought. They hadn't even moved in yet. They were still doing some light renovations, painting, rewiring, getting the place just right. And that's when it came, a plain, white envelope. No return address, just sitting there in the mailbox like it belonged. Derek opened it, probably expecting junk mail or a bill. But what he found inside stopped him cold. The letter began politely enough. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard. Allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. Strange, formal even. But as Derek kept reading, the tone shifted. It got personal and unsettling. The writer claimed they had been watching the house for decades. They said the home had been the subject of my family for generations, and that I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. What does that even mean? It didn't feel like a welcome letter anymore. It felt like a warning. And it only got worse. Because this person, this so-called watcher, they didn't just know the house. They knew them. By name. They mentioned Derek and Maria, but also their children. And not just their names, their nicknames. Details that weren't public. Things only close friends or family would know. They described how the kids played in the yard, which windows their bedrooms would be in. And then came this chilling line. Have they found what's in the walls yet? In time, they will. In the walls? What was this? A prank? A joke? But if it wasn't funny. This wasn't just creepy, it was invasive, and it felt threatening. Derek was shaken. He immediately contacted the previous owners. Had they ever received anything like this? They hadn't. So, who was watching? Why this house? Why them? And what did the Watcher mean by the second coming? It didn't make sense. But the fear was real. Derek and Maria had just invested everything they had in this home. And now, before even spending a single night there, they were being warned by a faceless stranger who seemed to know everything about them. And that was just the beginning. Just before we continue, if you're hooked by this story, do us a favor, like and subscribe. It may seem small, but for us, it means everything. These videos take hours of work to make. Your support keeps this channel alive. Derek went straight to the police. He brought them the letter, every word of it. The officer read it carefully, quietly, then looked Derek in the eyes and said, "Don't tell the neighbors." Because if this watcher was real, he could be anyone, watching from across the street, from the next house over, or even right beside them while they smiled and made small talk. It was a terrifying thought. They had just moved to this place for peace, a fresh start for their family. Now, they were being told to stay quiet, to stay alert, to trust no one. Derek and Maria didn't know what to do. They installed cameras, changed locks, started logging every little detail, cars passing by, unfamiliar faces, movement at night. Derek stayed up late, night after night, just watching, peeking through the blinds. waiting for something, anything, to make sense. Maria was unraveling. She couldn't sleep. Every noise made her jump. Every time her kids ran into the yard, she found herself scanning the windows of neighboring houses. And then, another letter arrived. Same white envelope, same no return address, same handwriting. But this one was worse. It mocked them. The writer said he saw them bringing furniture into the house. He described what pieces they moved, where they went. He knew they hadn't moved in fully yet. He knew who was in and out of the house. He mentioned the kids again, but not just in passing. He talked about them like he was studying them. And then came this bone-chilling line. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds? The way he wrote it. It was like he believed the house was alive, like it had history, dark history, and his job was to protect it or control it. And still, no fingerprints, no usable DNA. The envelope was clean. The letters were typed. Nothing traceable. Cameras didn't catch a thing. It was like this person didn't exist. Or worse, like he was everywhere. They never moved in. The house just sat there, big, beautiful, and completely empty. Maria was unraveling. She couldn't sleep, couldn't think. She said every time she looked at 657 Boulevard, she felt physically sick, like the house was staring back at her. The kids didn't understand. They kept asking, "When are we moving in, Mommy? Is the paint ready yet? Where's my room?" But how do you explain to your children, "We're not going inside because someone's watching us, not from far away, maybe from right next door, maybe even from inside the house?" So, the Broadduses froze everything. No more painting, no new floors. They called off renovations and started begging the police for real help. But there was nothing. No DNA, no fingerprints, not a single neighbor who saw anything suspicious. No one had even noticed anyone placing the letters. Just these envelopes, and the words inside them. Getting stranger, darker. One letter would sound poetic, like something from a Gothic novel. The next, mocking. Sarcastic, like the writer was laughing at them for being afraid. And then, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, the tone would shift. And it would get personal again, talking about their children, their movements, what rooms they'd chosen, where they'd be sleeping. One line said, "If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream." Who says something like that? There were a few neighbors who immediately caught attention. One, the Langfords. They lived right next door, an older family, reclusive, quiet, but just off. Michael Langford, the adult son, had a reputation in the neighborhood. Not criminal, just strange. He had a habit of staring out windows, standing silently in his yard, watching. He fit the profile. His house even had the right vantage point to see who was coming and going at 657 Boulevard. The Broadduses were convinced it was him. The police thought so too, at least at first. They brought him in, questioned him. But Michael denied everything. And with no fingerprints, no cameras, and no solid evidence, the case stalled. No confession, no charges. 2. The former owners. Then there's a detail most people missed. The previous owners, the Woods family, mentioned they had gotten one weird letter before selling. Just one, and they didn't think it was a big deal. Didn't report it, didn't warn the Broadduses. But now you have to wonder, was this just the beginning of something much bigger? Had the watcher been watching longer than anyone realized? Was the house cursed with this attention? 3. The Broadduses themselves? And then, the conspiracy flipped completely. Some neighbors started whispering that maybe, just maybe, the Broadduses had written the letters themselves. That the whole thing was a hoax. That they were trying to get out of an expensive mortgage. That they were angling for a book deal or a movie contract. Or, more cynically, trying to sue the Woods family for not disclosing the first letter. But here's the catch. They never moved in. They paid for renovations. Security systems. Investigators. Maria had an emotional breakdown. Derek was sleeping with a knife beside the bed in his old house. They lost hundreds of thousands selling the place, and they got nothing out of it. No payday, no movie deal at the time, just stress and lawsuits. Would you really ruin your own life for a hoax? But the theories didn't stop there. 4. A bitter neighbor? Others believe it could have been someone on the block. Someone jealous that a new family bought the crown jewel of the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard was one of the biggest homes on the street. And when the Broadduses started renovating it, people noticed. Maybe someone thought they were show-offs, or that they didn't belong. 5. A real estate rival? One theory suggested it could have been another buyer who wanted the house and lost out. They could have been trying to scare the Broadduses into selling, manipulating the situation to pick it up cheap later. But if that was the plan, it never worked. 6. A local with a grudge? Another theory points to someone who simply hated change, someone with an old-school view of the neighborhood, furious about new people moving in, remodeling, upgrading. It's not uncommon for someone with obsessive tendencies to act out in creepy, territorial ways. But there's one theory that most people don't talk about, one that's a little harder to explain. What if this wasn't just a person? Some believe that there's something strange about 657 Boulevard itself, that the house isn't just being watched, it's haunted by something older, something that's always been there. Think about it. The watcher never showed his face. The letters came from nowhere. No fingerprints, no DNA. The tone changed constantly, poetic one moment, threatening the next, like a different presence each time, almost like the house itself was speaking. Some paranormal enthusiasts say the house might be sitting on a ley line, or that it could be linked to older, darker energies, that it doesn't want new people, that it chooses its residents. And maybe the watcher isn't a person at all. Maybe it's a presence that attaches itself to whoever dares move in. Maybe it's still there, watching, waiting for the next young blood. The watcher kept writing, even after the Broadduses moved out, even after new owners moved in. You wonder who the watcher is. Turn around, look out the window. Maybe you've even spoken to me. That was one of the last letters. No fingerprints, no surveillance footage, no suspects that stuck, just questions and silence. The police couldn't solve it. The neighbors all had their theories, but none with proof. The media moved on, but the house stayed. And so did the mystery. Netflix made a series about it. They dramatized it, added fictional elements. But the real story? Still open, still chilling. 657 Boulevard. It's still there. A quiet suburban home in Westfield, New Jersey. Painted shutters, trimmed lawn, looks just like any other house on the block. But it's not. Because behind those walls, families were haunted. Not by ghosts, but by something worse. The unknown. A presence they couldn't see. A voice they couldn't silence. A fear they couldn't shake. And maybe somewhere nearby. The watcher is still watching, still waiting, still writing. Maybe 657 Boulevard wasn't just a house to him. Maybe it was an obsession, a legacy, a curse. So next time you pass by a perfectly normal-looking house on a quiet street, ask yourself, what secrets might be hiding behind the walls? Because some homes don't just have history, they have eyes. If this story gave you chills, tap that like button and subscribe for more true crime horrors like this. And let us know in the comments. What do you think? Was it a jealous neighbor, a hidden stalker, or something even darker? Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and always watch your windows.